Negotiators working with both the Ukrainians and with Russia and with Putin, and we look forward to seeing the continued progress that we've already seen over a very short period of time. I think it's important to point out that
Welcome to the NDTV World Report. I'm Priyanka. Let's start today's edition of the top global stories. London's Heathrow Airport will remain closed on Friday after a fire at an electrical substation triggered a major power outage, disrupting operations at one of the world's busiest airports and throwing the travel plans of hundreds of thousands into disarray. Due to a fire at an electrical substation supplying the airport, Heathrow is experiencing a significant power outage. Passengers have been warned to stay away. Heathrow, the primary hub for carriers like British Airways and Virgin Atlantic, typically handles over 1,400 flights and around 200,000 passengers each day. Some inbound flights have already been diverted, according to tracking service Flight Radar 24.
Well, Heathrow Airport is telling people simply not to come to the airport today. They say it will be closed until midnight local time. That's because of the fire at an electrical substation in the area, which has caused power outages, not just at Heathrow, but for thousands of homes in the area and residents therefore as well. We think that around 1,300 flights in and out of Heathrow will be cancelled as a result of this on Friday at least. That affects thousands and thousands of passengers, means that many of them will be in the wrong place. We've seen flights that were in the air when the closure of Heathrow was announced having to be diverted to other European airports, Paris, for example, and here in the UK, places like Gatwick and Birmingham and Manchester. It's causing major disruption on train services towards Heathrow in the west of London, disruption on the roads as well, as passengers still arrive not having heard the news that the airport is basically not operating today. And here on the southern runway at Heathrow, you can perhaps see the planes behind me parked up, not likely to be going anywhere today. And normally this would be a very busy flight path over my head into landing and takeoff at the southern runway. That, of course, not happening either, with the one of the world's busiest airports shut for Friday. Ollie Barrett, NDTV World, London.
Delhi police have filed a case against several visa and passport agents after the US Embassy flagged a major fraud that allegedly cheated the US government to obtain visas for applicants by providing false information. The crime branch filed the case under the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhit and the Information Technology Act of February 27th, based on the complaint in which an embassy representative said such visa agents operated mainly from Punjab, Haryana and other states.
सवाल सिर्फ भारत का नहीं है, वैश्विक रूप से हम इस बात के हैं कि गैर कानूनी तरीके से जो लोग दूसरे देशों में होते हैं, उनको वहां रहने का कोई कानूनी अधिकार तो है नहीं। जहां तक भारत और अमेरिका का सवाल है, हमने हमेशा कहा है कि जो वेरीफाइड होगा, जो सच्चे अर्थ में भारत का ही नागरिक होगा, वो अगर अमेरिका में गैर कानूनी तरीके से रहता है तो उसको वापस लेने के लिए भारत तैयार है। लेकिन बात हमारे लिए वहां से रुकती नहीं है। ये सामान्य परिवारों के बच्चे होते हैं, उनको बड़े बड़े सपने दिखाए जाते हैं और उनको ज्यादातर ऐसे होते हैं, उनको गुमराह करके लाया जाता है। और इसलिए ये ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग में जुड़े हुए पूरे इकोसिस्टम पर हमने वार करना चाहिए। और अमेरिका और भारत मिल करके हमारी कोशिश है और हमारी कोशिश रहनी चाहिए कि इस प्रकार की पूरी इकोसिस्टम को हमें जड़ मूल से नष्ट करना चाहिए, ताकि ह्यूमन ट्रैफिकिंग बंद हो और गरीब लोगों को जो अपनी धन दौलत बेच करके ऐसे बड़े बड़े सपने दिखा करके उनको अंधेरे में रख करके ले जाया जाए, उनके साथ भी अन्याय है। और इसलिए हमारी बड़ी लड़ाई उस पूरे इकोसिस्टम के खिलाफ है और मुझे विश्वास है कि राष्ट्रपति ट्रंप भी इस इकोसिस्टम को खत्म करने में भारत का पूरा सहयोग करेंगे.
A U.S. federal judge ordered President Donald Trump's administration not to deport Badr Khan Suri, an Indian man studying at Washington's Georgetown University, whose lawyer said that the United States was seeking to remove him after accusing him of harming U.S. foreign policy. The order is said to remain in effect until lifted by the court, according to a 3-paragraph order by the U.S. District Judge Patricia Giles in Alexandria, Virginia. Suri is living in the U.S. on a student visa and is married to an American citizen and has been detained in Alexandria, Louisiana, according to his lawyer. The Department of Homeland Security has accused Badr Khan Suri of ties to the Palestinian militant group Hamas and said he had spread Hamas propaganda and anti-Semitism on social media. Britain has updated its advice for citizens travelling to the US, warning them they face arrest or detention. Travel advice issued by the Foreign Office now stresses that the US strictly upholds entry rules and that those who do not abide by them could be detained. It is unclear when the British government updated its travel advice, but it comes as the Trump administration is tightening its enforcement of immigration rules. Earlier, guidance that was placed in February reads simply, the authorities in the US set and enforce entry rules. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney will trigger an early election this weekend for an expected vote on April 28, as per reports, against a backdrop of a trade war and sovereignty threats from the US President Donald Trump. Ukraine, Russia to hold talks with US officials in Saudi Arabia next week. Ukraine will have a delegation in Riyadh on the same day the US is holding ceasefire talks there with Russian negotiating team led by a secretive former FSB chief who played a key role in planning Vladimir Putin's 2022 full-scale invasion. At least 91 Palestinians were killed and dozens injured in Israeli airstrikes across Gaza on Thursday after Israel resumed its bombing campaign and ground operations in the territory. Hamas, which had not yet retaliated during the first 48 hours of the renewed Israeli assault, said its armed wing had fired rockets into Israel. Israel's cabinet has unanimously approved Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's request to fire the head of the country's Shin Bet Internal Security Service. The late-night decision to sack Ronen Bar deepens a power struggle focused largely over who bears responsibility for the Hamas attack that sparked the war in Gaza. It also could set the stage for a crisis over the country's division of powers. Israel's Attorney General has ruled that the cabinet has no legal basis to dismiss Bar. Tensions between Netanyahu and Bar had been building for months. Bar, who was appointed to lead the Shin Bet in 2021 by a previous prime minister, accepted responsibility for his agency's failure to hold the October 7th attack ahead of time. Donald Trump signed an executive order on Thursday that instructs that the U.S. Education Secretary Linda McMahon to start dismantling the Department of Education, seemingly attempting to circumvent the need to obtain congressional approval to formally close a federal department. The administration may eventually pursue an effort to get Congress to shut down the agency, Trump said at a signing ceremony at the White House on Thursday. Because its budget had more than doubled in size in recent years, but the national test scores had not improved. The federal government does not mandate curriculum in schools. That has been the responsibility of the state and local governments, which provide 90% of the funding to schools. Nevertheless, the White House, Trump repeated his campaign promise to send education back to the states.
We're going to be returning education very simply back to the states where it belongs, and this is a very popular thing to do, but much more importantly, it's a common sense thing to do, and it's going to work. Absolutely, it's going to work, and I can tell you from dealing with the governors and others in the state, they want it so badly. They want to take their children back and really teach their children individually.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is focusing on a post-war European military guarantee for Ukraine on air and sea support, moving away from his previous priority of securing troops on the ground to enforce any peace deal with Russia, as per reports. We're looking at sea in one scenario, the sky, obviously, land and borders and regeneration. Starmer told a meeting of military planners from the so-called coalition of the willing of nations that are in talks to provide security guarantees to Kyiv. North Korea said Friday it test launched new anti-aircraft missiles as its military threatened unspecified steps against the US and South Korea over their joint military drills that it views as an invasion rehearsal. The official Korean Central News Agency said that leader Kim Jong-un oversaw the test Thursday and called the missiles involved another major defense weapon system for North Korea. KCNA released 4 still images of the test, which have not been independently verified. One shows Kim at an observation point with monitor screens behind, blurred by the KCNA. The other images show a launch of a projectile and then a mid-air explosion and finally impact in water. The House of Lords was disrupted by a shower of leaflets, protesters chanting "Lords out, people in" from the gallery above the Lords chamber led to a pause in the proceedings. The protesters said they were acting on behalf of Assembly, an organization that campaigns for the Lords to be abolished and replaced by a citizens' assembly. Protests in Turkey have escalated over the arrest of one of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's top rivals. The Istanbul mayor was detained in a sweeping operation along with 100 others that just days before he was set to be named as a presidential candidate. A move that cemented Erdogan's grip on Turkey's political landscape. Some analysts argue that Erdogan may have been emboldened by US President Donald Trump, basically arguing Trump has created such chaos that foreign autocrats sense they can do whatever they want.
Turkey is on edge. Streets are filled with thousands of protesters. Police in riot gear. Pepper spray in the air. But what stands apart is a show of resistance not seen in years. A nation standing, fighting for democracy. At the heart of this storm is Ekrem İmamoğlu, the mayor of Istanbul and a top political rival of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Just days before his expected nomination as a presidential candidate, İmamoğlu has been arrested on the charges of corruption and aiding a terrorist outfit. His university degree has been annulled, a move that could legally disqualify İmamoğlu for running for president. The mayor has called the decision politically motivated.
Artık her şeyi bekliyor bir hale geldik. Şimdi dün diploma iptal edildi. Usulsüz bir şekilde, yani usulsüz bir işlem yapıldı. Usulsüz yapılan işlem de usulsüz yapıldı. Çok enteresan bir günlerden geçiyoruz. Çok korkunç. Bir kere diplomanın iptali usulsüz. Böyle bir şey mümkün değil.
Authorities have imposed a 4-day ban on public gatherings, but that hasn't stopped the demonstrators. From city squares to university campuses and even underground stations, thousands of people rallied in the cold, in front of the city hall, shouting, "Erdogan, dictator," and İmamoğlu, you are not alone.
Bu yapılanlar kesinlikle hukuksuz. Hukuksuz ve temelsiz. Bu demokrasi değil. Demokrasinin ayıbı. Yani yapılanlar Türkiye'ye yakışmıyor. Gerçekten bu halk bunu hak etmiyor. Üzülüyoruz yani. Sonuçta bu duruma üzülüyoruz. Biz insan olarak üzülüyoruz.
And as clashes erupt, the government tightens its grip. Roads are blocked, metro services halted, social media access restricted. But İmamoğlu remains defiant. In a video message recorded as police surrounded his home, he vowed to stand firm for democracy. İmamoğlu's party, the Republican People's Party, calls it a coup against their next president. And many now question whether Turkey's next election will be free or even fair. International leaders have condemned the arrest. The EU, France, and Germany warn that democracy in Turkey is under siege.
The arrest of the mayor is deeply concerning.
Erdogan's government denies involvement, insisting Turkey's judiciary is independent. But critics aren't convinced. After 22 years in power, Erdogan's grip on Turkey remains ironclad. For now, Imamoglu sits behind bars. His fate and the future of Turkey hangs in the balance. With Rhythm Arcadia, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
It's time for a short break. Lots more news and updates coming up on the other side. Stay tuned.
The India-US strategic partnership is one that's been developing now over the last several decades, and there's a great sense of optimism over here in India that it is headed in a...
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
One of your primary concerns and one of your primary responsibilities is to deal with the threat of terror. And at the moment, we see a great deal of that out of Yemen. We see attacks on shipping taking place, and we see the United States being very much on the offensive. Is that a prelude for something larger, perhaps even a ground offensive going forward?
I mean, you look at President Trump's leadership going back through his first term as president, he has been and remains very committed to combating and defeating the threat of Islamist terrorism that not only affects the United States, the American people, our own safety and security, but it is affecting so many people in different parts of the world. We can see different terrorist groups, the Houthis in Yemen being one of them, that President Trump has redesignated after President Biden took them off of the terrorist list, redesignated them appropriately as a terrorist organization, and taking action where the previous administration failed to.
Right.
The Houthis have been disrupting maritime trade and passage for a very long time, and no serious effort has been taken to stop that disruption. Our country and other countries should not be in a position to have to make a decision to reroute commerce going through that area simply because of the Houthi threat that exists. So President Trump has taken decisive action for our own safety, security, and prosperity. And I know we'll look to other affected countries, as there are many who are impacted by this, to similarly take action.
Welcome back. You're watching the NDTV World Report, and here are the highlights from the world of business and tech. Elon Musk, the world's richest man and a top advisor to US President Donald Trump, was issued a summons in connection with the Securities and Exchange Commission's lawsuit against him. A court filing on Thursday showed a process server gave the civil summons and other documents on March 14 to a security guard at the Brownsville, Texas headquarters of SpaceX, the space technology company of which Musk is CEO. The filing has said an answer is due on April 4th, according to the docket. Reports of an Instagram outage in the US on Thursday evening dropped significantly, according to outage tracking website downdetector.com, indicating that the issue has largely been resolved for most of the users. As of 8:34 p.m. ET, there were only 429 incidents reported, down from the earlier 19,431, according to the website that tracks outages by aggregating status reports from multiple sources. Chinese tech giant Huawei on Thursday unveiled the Huawei Pura X, the first smartphone that runs on its self-developed Harmony OS 5 operating system. The Harmony OS 5-driven Pura X features a one-to-one smart interactive outer screen, allowing high-frequency operations to be performed without unfolding the device, the company announced at the launch event in Shenzhen City in South China's Guangdong province. The launch of the new widescreen foldable smartphone marks the arrival of the Harmony OS operating system as a contender in the current market dominated by iOS and Android. Some smartphone users have expressed mixed opinions on the new operating system.
I would consider it, definitely. I think Apple is controlling much of that, but I would rather have a new option.
NVIDIA will open a quantum computing research lab in Boston, where it plans to collaborate with scientists from Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. CEO Jensen Huang said on Thursday. Huang made the announcement at NVIDIA's annual Software Developer Conference in San Jose, California, where NVIDIA held a day of events focused on quantum computing. NVIDIA added that the program after Huang in January said useful quantum computers are 20 years away, comments he sought to walk back on Thursday while joined on stage by executives from the quantum computing firms. The US dollar was on the front foot against major pairs on Friday after its best single-day performance for 3 weeks, with the Federal Reserve indicating no rush to cut the interest rates. The risk-sensitive Australian and New Zealand dollars remained on the defensive after steep slides on Thursday, as worries about the economic drag from US President Donald Trump's aggressive campaign of global trade tariffs dented sentiment. Oil prices rose in early Asian trading on Friday and was set for the second consecutive weekly gains, after fresh US sanctions on Iran and a new OPEC Plus plan for 7 members to cut output raised bets on tightening supply. Brent crude futures climbed 42 cents to $72.40 per barrel, while the US West Texas Intermediate crude futures were up 45 cents to $68.52 a barrel. Putting the spotlight on the sports world, Kirsty Coventry has been elected President of the International Olympic Committee, IOC, becoming the first woman and first African in the committee's 131-year-old history to get the job. The former swimmer, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, won 49 of the 97 votes of the IOC membership in the first round of voting.
This is an extraordinary moment. As a 9-year-old girl, I never thought that I would be standing up here one day, getting to give back to this incredible movement of ours. This is not just a huge honor, but it is a reminder of my commitment to every single one of you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And now we've got some work together.
Russian freediver Yekaterina Nekrasova is believed to have set a new world record in under-ice swimming. In a report broadcast on Thursday, Russian media said she swam over 120 meters or 400 feet under the frozen surface of Lake Baikal. If confirmed by the appropriate official organizations, that distance would be a world record. It took less than 2 minutes for Nekrasova to go through the icy waters without a wetsuit and using only her legs to propel herself. The water temperature was 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The previous record, too, belonged to Nekrasova and stood at about 103 meters. Jesse Eisenberg and Samuel L. Jackson attended the Broadway opening of Operation Mincemeat Thursday at the Golden Theatre in New York City. The musical is set in 1942, where the Allied forces are on the ropes. In the style of an Ian Fleming spy caper, the musical tells the true story of the covert operation that turned the tide of World War II. David Cumming, Claire Marie Hall, Natasha Hodgson, Olivia Award winner Jack Malone, and Zoe Roberts take the lead in Operation Mincemeat. Robert De Niro and Barry Levinson have reunited for their new mob film, The Old Two Knights. The film stars De Niro in a dual lead role as feuding mobsters Genovese and Frank Costello, based on real events in New York set in the 1950s. De Niro says he remembers hearing about the characters he now plays when he was a child. U2 is being honoured for their songwriting by the UK's largest not-for-profit association for songwriters. Bono, The Edge, Adam Clayton and Larry Mullen Jr. will become Fellows of the Ivors Academy on 22nd May at a ceremony in London. It's the first time that Irish songwriters have been selected to be Fellows. U2 follows previous honorees Bruce Springsteen, Kate Bush, Paul McCartney and Joan Armatrading, who are also Fellows of the Ivors Academy, a small group of only 32 members. It's time for a short break. Lots more news and updates coming up on the other side. Stay tuned.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
From interesting tech startups to industry-leading companies, politics, sports, culture, curry, cricket. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Like me, if you too thrive on interesting conversations, this is a show you cannot miss. Watch this space to know more about all matters and all people that make Britain what it is today. Out of Britain, with me, Radhika Iyer.
One of your primary concerns and one of your primary responsibilities is to deal with the threat of terror. And at the moment, we see a great deal of that out of Yemen. We see attacks on shipping taking place, and we see the United States being very much on the offensive. Is that a prelude for something larger, perhaps even a ground offensive going forward?
When you look at President Trump's leadership going back through his first term as president, he has been and remains very committed to combating and defeating the threat of Islamist terrorism that not only affects the United States, the American people, our own safety and security, but it is affecting so many people in different parts of the world. We can see different terrorist groups, the Houthis in Yemen being one of them, that President Trump has redesignated after President Biden took them off of the terrorist list, redesignated them appropriately as a terrorist organization, and taking action where the previous administration failed to.
Right.
The Houthis have been disrupting maritime trade and passage for a very long time, and no serious effort has been taken to stop that disruption. Our country and other countries should not be in a position to have to make a decision to reroute commerce going through that area simply because of the Houthi threat that exists. So President Trump has taken decisive action for our own safety, security, and prosperity. And I know we'll look to other affected countries, as there are many who are impacted by this, to similarly take action.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
has been announced inside the Aam Aadmi Party. Now, in fact, to give you the context, the Aam Aadmi Party's Political Affairs Committee meeting was held today, where major decisions regarding reshuffle was taken. Number one, Saurabh Bhardwaj will now be the Delhi state convener for the Aam Aadmi Party, and also, in fact, two senior leaders of the Aam Aadmi Party, that is Manish Sisodia and Satendra Jain, have now been given the responsibility for the state of Punjab. So certainly this is the Aam Aadmi Party's strategy to rebuild its cadre in Delhi and strengthen its cadre in Punjab, as also, in fact, it is gearing up for the Punjab election that takes place in 2027. But the BJP has now hit out at these decisions. And it was the Delhi Cabinet Minister Manjinder Singh Sirsa who said that two failed leaders, is what he's calling Manish Sisodia and Satendra Jain, have now been imposed on Punjab, as if the Aam Aadmi Party is treating Punjab like a rehab center. Also hitting out at Arvind Kejriwal, he's saying that Arvind Kejriwal's secret political ambition has always been, now after the Aam Aadmi Party's loss in Delhi, is to be the Punjab Chief Minister, and he's doing all the backdoor politics to achieve his goal. But that will not be done. So certainly the war of word after this has now intensified. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ashika, for joining us with those updates. Shifting our focus to Maharashtra now, Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis will be going to Nagpur either today evening or tomorrow. This after the recent violence that took place there following protest over the Aurangzeb tomb. The Chief Minister may hold a meeting with the ATS too. My colleague Radhika is joining me for more on this. Radhika, do tell us about the updates and the itinerary of Maharashtra Chief Minister.
That's right. Post Nagpur violence, Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis will be visiting Nagpur. He's at the assembly conducting multiple meetings as well, but he will mostly be visiting Nagpur either late night or tomorrow morning. This is what his team has told us. In fact, Chief Minister will be meeting all the senior police officials. He'll also be meeting several of the injured police personnel who were in fact left injured in that particular incident. Some of them who are still hospitalized. He will be monitoring the situation. He will be trying to understand what the status of the probe is. Remember, at least about 100 people have been arrested in connection to the case. Several social